to begin the Tullahoma Planning Commission meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. And as I look around the room, I've got 5 people here, so that's a quorum. So we are capable of doing business. So therefore, I will invite Brother Bobby, if you would please come and give us the invocation and pledge of allegiance to start our meeting.
Let us pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you, Lord. We ask you now, Lord, that you would instill wisdom upon these board members, Lord, as they make decisions, that you would be with them and guide them, and that they'll have a successful conclusion of their meeting today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Let us say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so if you would, if the members would please turn to page 3. We have the minutes from the last meeting here. Take a review, and if there are no additions or corrections, we'll entertain a motion.
Larry?
Yes.
Very top of the date. Thank you.
July 15th.
Yep. The one that says the 16th, 2018. So it will be as amended.
Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, there's
Yes, sir.
another one there in the minutes. This should be for, I believe it was June, when the June meeting was, but it's for minutes for July 15th. It should be for minutes for June. Looking on the calendar.
Yeah, it's item 4.
Yep.
Yeah.
It should be
Number 4.
17.
Should be the 17th.
June the 17th.
Thank you.
I didn't want to amend my amendment.
No. It's, you asked for it approved with amendments, so we made another amendment, so.
Yeah, it hadn't been voted on. yet.
Going once, going twice.
Okay, so I have a motion and second to approve the minutes with the amendments as noted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Minutes will be approved as amended. Reports of staff and officers.
Staff has their report for tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay, then we'll get to old business. This old business is a zoning map amendment 227, request to rezone approximately 50 acres at 330 Ledford Mill Road from A to R1. It begins on page 5. This was the one that we had last time, and we postponed. Lee, would you like to make some comments, please?
You know, this was property that, on Ledford Mill Road, at 330 Ledford Mill Road, which is 50 acres, wanted to be rezoned from, the applicant wanted to rezone it from agriculture to R1. We postponed it last month for now. I've called the applicant and let them know that staff's recommendation was for us to table this request until we've got 2 text amendments on the agenda tonight for review. We're wanting to get those or a districts like those in the zoning ordinance, and then we would support a rezoning of the property.
Is there anyone from the owners of the property here tonight?
Mr. Waters and I talked today. He's at a convention in Louisville today, and he won't be here.
What, do you know, did you approach this subject with him?
Yes, I called him Friday and had a discussion with him about what the staff's recommendation was going to be.
And was he amicable to that?
Yes, he was.
So therefore, I need a motion to table this.
And then when it's ready to be brought back, and then somebody will have to make a motion, or you'll have to make a motion and then bring it back onto the agenda.
Okay.
Motion to table?
Second.
I have a motion and second to table this zoning map amendment request until such time as we have completed the other documentation changes that we're going to make, and we are ready to submit this for approval. All those in favor say
Would you
aye.
care for further discussion?
Discussion, I'm sorry.
The developer, Mr. Waters, actually, he's not the developer, he's the owner of the property. He wants to simply sell the property. He has indicated he has people looking at the property to buy it even as a lump sum, as it currently is. That's in limbo. He is interested in doing whatever it takes to make the property sell. He does not want to see the property subdivided, does not to see it zoned so that you could put 3 houses per lot on that. He's much more civic-minded for what goes on in Tullahoma than that. He wants to see at least subdivided. He presented 1 acre lots in his original proposal. So certainly I think it's in order to table this until we have further to do with this new text amendment we're looking at.
Any other discussion?
And I just want to make sure, if we table it, wasn't there like a 60 days and then it goes away? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, that's when it gets sent up to the board, mayor, and alderman. They have 120
Okay.
days to act, and then if they don't, it's considered denied.
Okay, so we can table it, it's no
Yes.
problem. Okay, good.
Yeah, 60 days applies to
Subdivision.
subdivision
That's-
requirements.
Okay, that's what it was.
All right, so the motion and second is to table this until such time as we're prepared to bring it forward again to the commission. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. This subject will be tabled at this point. And we will begin with new business, which will be a subdivision text amendment beginning on page 14. This is a text amendment to 413 requirements for sidewalks and related pedestrian facilities of the Tullahoma subdivision regulations by removing the requirement for internal and external sidewalks in new subdivisions outside the city limits but in the urban growth boundary. Lee, would you like to speak to this?
It's just requiring, limiting the requirement for sidewalks and subdivisions outside the city limits. The only ones that we review are the ones that are in our urban growth boundary. Purpose of requiring the sidewalks at one time is when we were able to do annexations by ordinance. But the state legislators have taken that power away from the city, so we would end up having a bunch of sidewalks that are kind of isolated or out there, and then the owners would be responsible for keeping them up because they would never be able to be connected to our system.
Okay, and this is to be a public hearing, so I'm going to open the public hearing and we will have our commission discussion afterwards, once we have a motion. So I'm going to open the public hearing. The rules of the public hearing are this for anyone interested, and it applies to all public hearings, which there'll be more of tonight. If you have something to say at the public hearing, come forward to the podium, state your name and your address so we know who you are and where you're from. You'll be allotted 2 minutes to speak to your subject. If there are more than one of you that are on the same subject and you want to delegate your minutes to the primary speaker, then you may do so, but you will still have to come to the podium, give your name and address and state that you wish to delegate your minutes to that primary speaker. So this public hearing on this text amendment is now open. Does anyone want to speak from the audience concerning this? Seeing no one wanting to come forward and speak to this from the audience, I'll close the public hearing and I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve. These are text amendments, so this will be to send a,
This is a subdivision text amendment.
oh,
So this is
subdivision
approved
text
by this
amendment, so
board.
we can do this ourselves, so.
Once it's voted on, then it's the rule.
It's done. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of another one
The
that has to
zoning
go,
ordinance,
the
yeah.
zoning thing. So, we have it before us. Is there any discussion from the commission? Yes,
Well,
sir.
I have one. We're removing something that, we don't have any really control over now because the state legislature has changed the requirements or the rules. At one time, could we had any jurisdiction
We
of
could.
stuff outside our city limits?
Yeah, there was like a sort of a litmus test that was to be done to prove an area is urbanized where it would need city services, and then we would used to been able to annex that area in involuntarily. We could have just done it by ordinance.
We could do that without it being annexed from the city board, right?
The city board could annex it at that time. They would have been the ones that had to approve the actual annexation and bring it into the city.
What came first, the sidewalks or the annexation?
The sidewalks were a regulation that was in the previous, the external ones were in the previous subdivision regulations. The internal ones came with the new regulations that we have now that we adopted last year. But that was adopted, Public Chapter 707 was adopted back in 2014 and didn't come into effect until 2015.
Yeah.
So it's,
Well, I agree with what the state legislature did. I've always been a little icky about using eminent domain or whatever to make somebody do something that's not in our city limits. I just think that it's icky.
What happens though if a neighborhood decides they want to come to us and ask for annexation?
That's fine.
But they won't have sidewalks then, right? So then that's just,
no, I mean, they wouldn't have sidewalks in that particular area.
It is what it is, but I don't want to,
The likelihood if you get in a really dense area outside the city as
Yeah.
far as population would be
Something else.
impractical because they wouldn't have sewer, so they would have to be annexed in to do a sizable development.
okay.
Yeah, they couldn't do it on septic tanks because then they would have to get, they'd have to have the property for the septic and the wells and all that stuff.
If they were gonna build a subdivision outside in the urban growth boundary, would they annex first and then come in, or would,
Well, if they needed sewer service, then they would come and get annexed first.
before they built the property?
Right.
we want the utilities.
Okay.
But since annexation is by person or individual dwelling.
It has to be done voluntarily by the property owner or by a referendum, and it has to be put on a ballot.
So you could have subdivisions where certain people could request annexing and get annexed, and other people in the same subdivision
Right.
wouldn't.
Because we have that already.
Yeah, we have
like on
those.
Parkway Road,
Yeah.
Deer.
And there's also the fact that actually urban growth boundaries are beginning to be called into question as to whether they're really a viable thing anymore or not, with all the state regulations changing the way they are, so.
What may be hunky-dory today may not be in a year.
In a year, yeah.
Stay tuned.
I really was hoping Bill would be here tonight. I would have liked to have heard his comments on it. And I didn't get to see him this week, so.
So yesterday he was planning to be here.
All right, do we have any further discussion? If not, then I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the what are we doing? The subdivision text amendment as printed in the document, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. It is approved. Okay, now we move on to subdivision plats. And once again, these are public hearings, same rules apply, at least on these. Bluebird Minor Subdivision Final Plat begins on page 17. A plat to create 4 lots from an existing tract at 3075 Short Springs Road. So, I will open the public hearing, and anyone who wishes to approach and speak to this, is the owner present?
I am.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, let me.
Oh, give an explanation, Lee, I'm sorry.
Here, so, yeah, they're wanting to cut 4 lots out of an existing parent tract that's 12 acres. The portion that they're going to use is around 3.28 acres. It's on Short Springs. It's out in the urban growth boundary. It's on the corner, or near the corner of Short Springs Road and J.D. Neal. It's zoned RS1, which is low-density residential in Coffee County. The lots that they're proposing does meet the minimum standards required by the Coffee County zoning resolution. And the subdivision also meets all the requirements of the city, so staff gives it a favorable recommendation.
Are the lots marked in blue the ones
Yeah,
that are
those are the
being
ones I showed
subdivided?
that, as far as on the aerial, what the concept of it is.
And are the structures shown on section 2 still there?
I believe the one on number 2 is still there. Let the owner answer that. Yeah, it was just the lot, the structure on lot 2, or the proposed lot 2. Is it still there?
I see what looks like 3 structures. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Almost 22.
No, that's this. If the board wants us to take it down, it's not a big problem.
Okay. Because I sent this to the county and I never did get a response from their guys, so I mean, it never, you know.
They're pretty light.
The only one I'm concerned about is if all 3 of them are there, the one closest to the property line of element 1 looks a little close. Maybe, I don't know if it fits the setbacks or not, the way it
Be 10
is.
feet, isn't it?
Hmm?
Supposed to be 10 feet, isn't it?
Not in there.
Be 25.
Some of it's 25, I believe.
Well, that looks close too.
25 in Coffee County.
Well,
On the plat, it's,
all of those look too close.
Yeah.
are you planning on removing these buildings, or?
I do, there's no, it's really just, it needs to come down. It's an eyesore, so it will, the plan is for it to come down.
So you don't mind if they make that part of the motion, they approve it?
That would be
On the
great.
petition, these.
Okay, so if we motion it, then we would motion it with the requirement that those existing structures be removed,
Or meet the setbacks.
or meet the setbacks, either way.
They would have to shift the lot line, so they'd have to come back here for,
Unless they move the buildings inward.
well, if they relocated the buildings, they would.
I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, there's at least one that looks like it's got enough distance, but
He's just agreeable to just.
Take them down.
take them down.
Okay.
That makes it easier.
What about the building that's on the parent track that's just behind the lot 1 and 2?
That probably is okay.
Its distance looks okay.
Is that a barn?
That's what it looks like.
Do we know what that is?
It would-
Yeah, that's a shop.
It's a
And
shop.
that's 43.26 feet from the back of those lots.
So it's
Okay.
good.
Yeah, that's plenty.
Does the
Yeah,
county
that's good.
allow, does
You
the
got
county
this.
allow accessory structures on the back of the lot?
They do in the county.
Anybody else wish to speak to this from the floor? Then I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Motion to approve is what we're doing, right? Correct, with the condition that those structures be removed on lot 2?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'll second.
I have a motion and second that we approve the request for subdivision with the condition that the 3 structures on the, what would be lot number 2 are to be removed. Any discussion from the commission?
Still having more questions about urban growth boundary. This is outside our city limits,
Yes,
and we have jurisdiction over our UGB.
yes. Subdivision, that's it. That still is under the county zoning.
I don't get that. I mean, they're not paying taxes to the city. Why do we have a dog in the fight?
Well, it's because they did that countywide growth plan. That was the law back in '99. So we had to do it with the counties and create a coordinating committee. And it was, at the time, this is before they got rid of the annexation. It was, I guess the reason was for it was to create orderly annexation. If all the development already met the urban growth boundary, met the requirements of the city, then it would be easier for the city to annex it and they would be conforming to the city standards.
How far is this outside the city limits of Tullahoma? 3 miles?
Yeah.
Easy. Maybe 4.
I don't know. It ends after the water tower, right? I don't know.
Yeah, it wouldn't
I'm
be
not
3
exactly where it
miles.
ends.
2.
Like 2?
Maybe 2.
It's like right before that, right, onto towards Rutledge.
You probably have the closest point, because they did that corridor annexation where the city limits follows 55 all the way down the corridor, and then everything off of 55.
Mr. Worsham, do you know of any kind of, anybody that's opposed this with litigation on UGB stuff?
No one has.
Okay. Am I crazy then? Do I think it's crazy for us to have jurisdiction over something that they're
Well,
it's like taxation without representation in a way.
this is all part of a statewide scheme to set a parameter of regulation that applies statewide to cities and counties and how they interact with each other in things like zoning and annexation, things of that nature. And all we're doing is complying with the state law. We don't have any authority to
Well,
deviate from that.
I know
I'm not
that,
saying
but I think
it's not
it,
been questioned in litigation, so it stands.
I think this is Jimmy Blanks, and I'm not the Caesar or the emperor of this, but if it's in our city, yes, we should be, have a little bit of say-so in that. But something out there, I know it's nothing that we're gonna change, but us telling them what they have to do is sort of nuts, in my opinion.
Philosophically, I agree with you,
Yeah.
but in fact, why?
We have to deal with it.
requires that. Yeah, we have to.
Okay, sorry, guys.
Mr. Worsham, does this or have also anything to do with the fact that we are a regional planning commission
Yes,
versus
there
a
is a difference
city?
between the regional planning commission and the municipal planning commission, it does.
And
But
we are
also
a
the
regional
state law
planning
about
commission.
The development of urban growth boundaries and things of that nature actually supersede authority by regional versus municipal planning commissions in some of these areas.
Mhm.
And we're just complying with the state law, and as you know, sometimes that's a patchwork of things
Yeah.
that are not necessarily coordinated, but that's what we have to deal with.
Yeah, and sometimes don't make sense because they
Right.
seem to argue with each other.
But no one has opposed this, and apparently the property owners are willing to comply, whether they like it or not. Thank you.
Any other discussions? All right, then I'll call the question. All those in favor of approval of this subdivision with the condition that the 3 existing structures on Lot 2 be raised, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. It is approved. Okay, on to Ovoca Peak Denby Minor Subdivision Final Plat. A plat to create 2 lots from an existing 0.67 acre lot at 1713 Ovoca Road. Starts on page 24. And we will open the floor for public hearing on this. Evening, Andy.
Land surveyor did the survey on this property. My client bought the property. It has an existing house and a couple outbuildings on it. The outbuildings are not in that great shape, so the client has asked, is willing to remove those 2 outbuildings, create another lot around the existing house, then create another flag lot in the back to be built on a new single-family dwelling. This property is on Ovoca Road, just before you get to the fire hall number 2.
Okay. Is there anyone from the audience who wishes to speak to this issue? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion. Picture of the subdivision on 29.
Motion to approve. If we don't have a second, it dies.
I'll second.
I have a motion and
Okay, okay.
Hold it. I have a motion and second to approve the subdivision as presented in pages 24 through 30. We'll entertain discussion now from anyone.
Am I correct, though, that the recommendation is to approve it with the 2 accessory buildings being removed?
That is the recommendation.
Okay. So would we, if that were the way we would want to do it, we would need to make a new motion, is that correct? Or?
Amended, I guess.
Well, no, it already states that they're going to be removed on the plat.
Oh, it does, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The plat already stated it.
Okay, so we don't have to
therefore,
make them-
We don't have to decide that.
Okay, great.
The owner said he's going to do it.
My question is, access to Lot 2, you'll come off of Avoca, up the flagpole will be your driveway? If you put a house on Lot 2?
Yes.
That turn in the road behind it, back to the west, is that a road?
Driveway.
Okay, so there's no access there.
Yeah, it's, there's a huge drainage ditch that runs on that lot line.
Between the driveway and the property, so. And one of the reasons the outbuildings are being removed, other than the fact that they're not in good shape, is the fact that they have to remove the one just to give enough room for the flagpole.
What's the acreage of 1 and 2 together?
0.67,
Yeah, .67.
Yeah.
small.
We're gonna make them smaller.
They do meet the minimum size in the R2 zoning district.
My thing is, you got a house with a driveway, I think they always look sort of goofy, but that's just me.
It's going to put 2 driveways pretty close together there. There's another issue.
And drainage with that? Like stormwater drainage, et cetera?
The plat was approved by Public Works.
Okay.
I'm assuming there'll be, I think there's some drainage towards Ovoca, but there's also drainage off the back lot going back to that drain ditch that's by the driveway, so.
This is nearly the split point between the Duck River and the Elk River watersheds, I think.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Very close.
Right along there.
And so the buildings that are being removed are the shed, the garage, and the garage, is that correct, that I'm looking at on the plat?
Should have the writing on there on the structures.
They're so tiny.
Yeah.
I can't read what's underneath the garage and shed.
Full-size copy right here.
Here.
To be removed is what it says. I see.
All right.
I'm assuming there's a plan to build on lot 2, the new lot?
That's correct.
I don't think that does anything good for the property. It's not a good idea.
Just put it on. I know I'm doing it just to double it up.
Is there any further discussion by the commission? If not, I'll call the question. Those in favor of approving the request for subdivision of this property with the provisions as stated in their plat, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no?
No.
No,
I said aye earlier.
You did?
Yeah.
So it's 3-2 and the ayes would carry, so it is approved. I do understand your no. Okay, next one is
bad deal.
Sides Turkey Creek Drive minor subdivision final plat. A plat to create 2 lots from an existing 2-acre lot at 1005 Turkey Creek Drive. Begins on page 31. Lee, will you explain?
Yeah, it's a plat, you cut one plat, or 2 lots into, or 1 lot into 2. It's on Turkey Creek Road. We have an existing house on lot number 1. There is a variance request with this. The flagpole section of it, of the lot, it's required to be 50 feet on lots that are larger than 1.5 acres. The request is to reduce that width by 10 feet down to 40 feet to accommodate the existing house, because if they were to do the full 50 feet, then it would encroach on the Franklin County side setbacks for the existing structure. And this is in the urban growth boundary, but this one's in Franklin County instead of Coffee County.
Did we not receive something in writing from Franklin County?
I received an email from the director, Mrs. Petronick, and she was fine with the plat. She said it met the zoning resolution of Franklin County. But I did note it in with the rest of the interdepartmental approvals, the Franklin County Planning and Zoning.
Here's one of these where I have to call into question what you talked about, Jimmy. If Franklin County has said that the 40 feet wide is acceptable to them, why should we have to have a variance?
Because the regulations, the subdivision regulations that we have requires 50 feet. And so by law, they have to follow our subdivision regulations.
Because they're in our urban growth
Because of the
boundary.
urban growth boundary.
Is it outside the city?
Yes.
I don't like giving variances. This'll have to come up before the BOZA, won't it?
Nah.
How are we gonna grant the
It's over here.
variance?
Well, this is a subdivision variance, this isn't a zoning variance.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Okay, I will open, it's supposed to be a public hearing. I shouldn't be asking questions right now. I'm at fault. Sorry, Ray. He calls me on that all the time. So, I'm sorry. So I will open the public hearing.
Again, Andy Best, I'm the surveyor on this project. Originally, my client came to me and was asking me to cut out a lot in the back, leaving an easement accessing the property, the landlocked tract in the back. Franklin County allows that. Had his property been another mile outside the city limits, we could have put it through that way. But because we're in the urban growth boundary, the lot in the back must have road frontage. The way we're getting road frontage is with the flagpole. The last project, the one we just looked at, was a 30-foot flagpole. That is allowed because the Tullahoma Subdivision Code says that under the acre and a half, you're allowed a 30-foot flagpole. If you're over 2 acres, or over an acre and a half, you have to have a 50-foot flagpole. So Tullahoma allows both 30-foot and 50-foot flagpoles. We are asking for a variance for a 40-foot flagpole on this one, just because it's, without doing that, it's going to violate the setbacks on the existing dwelling on the front line. Information of urban growth boundaries. I think Tennessee is only one of 7 states in the 50 states that have these. And I've heard from the tax convention that they're about to start fighting. So
I was asking, we hadn't had litigation over this.
So were you saying that if that was not within our urban growth boundary, they would have just been able to have an easement?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you could have a landlocked tract in the back and a tract in the front that takes up all the road frontage and an easement that gives them access to the landlocked tract in the back.
Is the property owner,
Well, hold on, we do allow that. But it has to be a 50-foot easement to one lot. If it was to be cut into multiple lots, then a road would have to be put in, but you can do one lot that's accessed by a 50-foot easement.
we don't even have a motion yet, do we?
We're still in public hearing.
My bad.
We're in public hearing. Thank you, Andy, for letting us know where we came from with the 40 feet. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak to this subject? You are the landowner? Oh, you're not. Oh, you are the landowner. Okay. Well, we're glad to have you here. Seeing no one else to speak, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the request for the subdivision with a variance?
You can do them at the same time, sign. Yeah, and the
With the
subdivision regulations
variance
allows you to do it.
For the
you don't
40
do it as a
feet
separate-
wide
Yeah.
driveway.
So that you should, it should be in the motion that you're approving the variance and the plat, so it's in the minutes as being approved, both of them being part of the same motion.
Once the owner is here, if they build a house, you don't care if there's a house in your backyard.
No.
Okay.
Pretty big barn.
There's already a barn back there?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is the barn on your lot?
It's on the back lot.
On the back lot?
Yes, sir.
Because it doesn't show up in the picture, I was wondering.
Yeah, it does.
Way in the back.
So do we need to amend the motion?
Yeah, so you need to make it where it's, you're approving the variance and
Yeah.
the plat.
We need to make sure that's in there.
Make a motion that we amend the plat and amend the variance and, do all the grand poobah stuff for the UGB, even though I don't agree with it.
Second.
Second.
Well, yeah, I was like,
Leave me hanging.
do you have to do it or do I?
So I have an amendment I've got to get approved first
Yeah, vote
before
on
I,
that, yep.
before we do the
Amend.
other. Okay, so we have an amendment on the floor to grant a variance for the driveway to be 40 feet. Any discussion on this subject?
I again have a question. If this board decided not to approve this, does it go back to Franklin County, or is it they don't get their approval?
No, they wouldn't get the approval for the plat.
Then we can get
Property would be
the
divided.
approval.
See, I still think it's nuts that we have jurisdiction over this. I just think it's crazy. What if I said I don't want to vote on this? If I abstain from voting, it's still going to be, if we all abstained, it doesn't get approved, right?
No, it would just, it would come back, and in 60 days, it would be automatically be approved.
We need to talk to our senator and our representative about this nonsense.
Knowing how old I am, it won't happen in my life.
Well, I mean, if they've been talking about it, maybe it will, but, for us to have
Yeah.
a voice on zoning and somebody that we can't even tax, I think is improper. I understand the UGB, we're trying to develop, but how far is this out of the city limits?
Well,
A mile?
About the same as
It's
the
not in
last
our
one.
jurisdiction. It's not our bailiwick. But here we are.
Any further discussion on the amendment? If not, I'll call a question on the amendment to grant a variance of a 40-foot driveway instead of a 50-foot driveway. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The amendment
Abstain.
carried.
Abstain.
And one abstention. Could
no
have been
business.
two.
Let me explain my vote a little bit to you guys. The last one, I did the way I did because it was in the city. It was in our jurisdiction, so to speak. This one's not. So, I'll hold him up because of that. Just,
Okay, now, discussion on the subdivision. Any discussion on the motion to approve the subdivision?
Didn't we just approve it with the amendment?
No, you
That was
approved the amendment.
Okay. You want it to read, to approve the final plat and the variance. The variance and the final plat has to be in the motion.
Was it not?
It was originally, that's why you amended it.
Okay.
Now it is.
Now we go back to the original.
Now we go back to the original motion. Any further discussion? And I don't think there'll be any, so I'll call the question. Those in favor of approving the subdivision with the amendment for the variance, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. It's approved.
One abstention.
One abstention. And understand, Jimmy, you can abstain
I know.
if you think it's honestly not the best thing for the city, then you can abstain. But if you do, I'll
I don't
get
want to
you.
hold them up for,
Yeah.
60 days for it to come
Exactly.
back.
And I'll explain my abstention. I feel I really have no business voting on it.
I concur.
Okay, we are at item number 4, Sheldon Crest Drive, minor subdivision, final plat. A plat to create 2 lots from an existing 4.49 acres at 307 Crest Drive. This is on page number 40. And I will open the floor for the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, first before.
Oh, I'm sorry. Lee, will you please
Yeah,
explain?
It's zoned R1, it's on Crest Drive, it's on the east side of town. There is some, it is dividing into 2 lots. There is some flood issues on lot number 2, but there is a buildable area on the front that's shown. You put the building pad or the setbacks and dashed lines for lot 2, that's where the buildable area is. It's not in any type of special flood hazard area. Bubba Creek does cross the property at the rear. The existing structure that'll be on lot 1 meets setbacks. So the request meets the zoning regulations and the subdivision regulations, and staff gives it a favorable recommendation.
Andy?
I don't know if you need to say that. That pretty much sums it up.
Okay. Is there anyone else from the audience who wishes to speak to this subdivision request? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve this subdivision request as presented. Any discussion from the commission?
A question,
Yes.
Chairman. I have not been able to put in my mind exactly where this is.
Go out Lincoln Street, East Lincoln Street.
Lincoln
You know,
Street.
Wesley, Highland, Crest. You know where Ham Street is?
Yes,
Ham Street, then you go to Wesley Street, Highland Drive, and then Crest Drive.
It's across the street, right, or?
Well, this backs up to all that area. There's not any more subdivision land past the Crest Drive.
Yeah.
My grandparents used to live on Crest Drive, so I know they lived right across from there, actually, over in that area.
where is that where is Crest Drive now relative to East Lincoln?
Well, you're going past East Lincoln like you're going to Manchester. Keep going. You know, you have Ham Street,
Old Manchester Highway.
Old Manchester Highway. So it's the last little subdivision on the right. There's a church right across. Well, there's Wesley Heights Methodist.
Okay,
And then there's another little church.
yes,
Turn right in front of that church is Crest Drive.
I know where we are.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Just gonna get over in that part of town, Bill.
Any discussion from the commission on this request? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of approval of this subdivision as presented here, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. It's approved. The next one will be West Lincoln, Bun, Denby, minor subdivision, final plat, a plat to create 2 lots from existing .71 acre lot at 1306 West Lincoln Street. Begins on page 48.
This is a .71 acre lot. They're cutting into 2. There's 2 existing structures. There'll be 1 on each lot. They meet their setbacks, the minimum lot width and the minimum lot size. So staff has given a favorable recommendation.
So we had 2 structures on 1 lot,
Yes.
basically, and
Now we're going to have one structure on each, on a lot by itself.
each of them are residential.
They'll have
And one's a duplex, right?
One's a duplex as far as the way it's structurally built, yes. I don't know what's being used for as right now. I probably need to ask the applicant to.
Okay, and I will open the public hearing for
You wanna-
this one.
Wait, he had a question for that.
I'm sorry, huh?
The structure, is it still being used as a duplex?
It is a single family.
They're using it as a single family?
So it's being treated as 2 single-family homes. Okay.
why does it say the building on lot number 1 is a duplex, and duplexes are not a permissible use in the R1 district?
The structure's a duplex, but they're not using it like a duplex.
Okay.
That doesn't mean they can't.
Could
Yeah.
you use it as a duplex?
But-
Well, I assume you could. I mean, it's not a conforming structure.
It's not zoned for a duplex, is it?
Well, I mean,
No.
the situation is you have a house and a duplex on one lot right now.
Yeah.
And they're gonna cut that in half, where you're gonna have one on one lot and one on the other.
Mhm.
Right now, they're using it as a single family. I don't know what their plans are as far as if they're planning to ever revert back to a duplex, because we wouldn't be able to. I mean, if we found out there it was, then we'd end up having to, send letters and do the code enforcement.
Okay, that was my question, is what would happen if they,
Yeah.
okay.
This is a non-conforming use. This property and the building of the duplex on that property probably redates as being zoned at all.
Okay.
It's been there for a number of years, probably since World War II. in there.
Really?
So it's just essentially grandfathered in at that
Yeah.
point, though, right? Okay.
Right.
Right, but once it's discontinued being used as that use,
Then-
for our zoning regulations, the non-conforming section,
Goes away.
then it has to, be conforming, and it's all, any use that's gonna be housed in there from here on out.
Got it.
Yeah.
So we do have control over to where they can't. Just go out and rent it out. Any further discussion on this subject? Did we step over you, Andy, and not letting you have a chance to talk about it?
Never opened a public hearing.
I never opened the public hearing? All right, well, I'll open the public hearing. We've had a big discussion, so.
But I don't have much to add to it other than, the client, my client, the owner of the property, has agreed to add a second driveway onto lot 1. There was currently one driveway that accesses both of the structures. So he's going to be adding another driveway. Also dedicating some right-of-way, because the city, when they came in and upgraded the sidewalk for the West Middle School project, actually put some of the sidewalk over on the property. We're dedicating about 1,000 square feet of right-of-way to widen the right-of-way of West Lincoln to allow the sidewalk to actually lie inside the right-of-way and not on private property.
And they are gonna be posting a bond with this plat for $6,400 for the, where they're gonna have to go through the sidewalk to make the driveway for the proposed lot 1.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak from the audience concerning this? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, when
Yes.
someone makes a motion, they need to make a motion to approve the plat and approve the bond amount.
Okay.
Motion to approve the plat and also the bond amount of $6,400.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve the subdivision request and the bond amount of $6,400 for the work to be done. Any discussion?
Is this a little bit west of Reagan Street where it cuts across? How far down?
Deary Street, if you're going out West Lincoln, you're passing Deary Street on the right. This is just past there, but then to your left is Turkey Creek Drive going to the new West Middle School. So basically right across the street from that intersection of Turkey Creek. Or the old Palmer's Studio or
Plumbers.
Plumbers, yeah.
It's right before that,
Yeah, just right.
so it is west of Reagan.
And the driveway's coming off of West Lincoln Street, correct? Into 1.
Yeah, one currently doesn't have a driveway.
Any further discussion from the commission? Then I'll call the question. We have a motion and a second to approve the subdivision request as presented and the bond amount submitted for the work on the sidewalks and driveway. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, next thing up Zoning amendments. This is zoning text amendment 221, amending the zoning ordinance with the following, and I'll let Lee explain all the following to you. It does begin on page 55.
We're suggesting that we change the way we do the plan unit development. Instead of making it as a use by right in every district, as to making it a district or an overlay district of itself, where it would have to be rezoned, go through the rezoning process instead of a site plan process like we would do on a normal development. There's 4 different districts that would be allowed to be done. There's a planned residential, there's a planned commercial, there's a planned industrial, and a planned mixed-use district. We would come to the planning commission for recommendation, then it would go to the board of mayor and aldermen for the actual rezoning in the process. The rezoning would be based upon a site-specific plan that was drawn up and submitted by a design professional representing the applicant. It would give a lot of flexibility to staff and the developer as well too. Any type of exception to the base zoning district would they'd have to explain or have an exception or a request for an exception and get that exception. Like if they wanted to do something higher density than would be required in the base zoning district like the R1, then they would have to state that in their proposal, and then that would be considered and be allowed or not allowed per the the approval process or the rezoning process.
So the reason we're doing this zoning text amendment is to
grant more flexibility. The current one we do have isn't very flexible. It's kind of rigid, and then it goes to a lot of them takes a rezoning anyway because what they want to do in there is allowed in the base zoning district that they do have, and so I mean this would basically put the process together, both of them, because they're most likely going to have to go through it anyway. But it is about flexibility and being able to get a better product when somebody's wanting to do a large-scale development in the city.
I was going to say, this really touches on larger segments of property when you're dealing like this.
Yeah,
because you're designating a certain large area of property to be in this style of planning versus.
And the rules would be based upon what the site-specific plan was, like whatever they're showing as far as the layout of the buildings and the density. That's what they have to follow, is that plan. They can't deviate from it much. There is an amendment process to it, but they have to come back to the board of mayor and aldermen to get it amended if they want to change anything that would be considered a major change or a significant change.
Is there anything that initiated this, like somebody that was trying to have a big development and they were going to have to go through a lot of?
Yeah, we have a proposal in the northeast part of town, and we've got another one that's on the very opposite side of town of developments they're wanting to do. That was going to be there's really no way for them to do it under our base zoning districts, but with a planned development district, they'll be able to come to the table with their development. We'll be able to negotiate with them to a certain extent as far as open space, aesthetics, sidewalks.
And this is in the city, correct?
This would just be for the city. This would be the city zoning ordinance, and it would apply to within the city limits.
So my question is, when I was reading this, it sounded like it was for a development where you'd have like multiple residential homes, a park, that type of, to allow for that with like a common space and possibly even like a coffee shop, et cetera, on the same spot, right?
In the mixed use district, you could have a mixture just like a downtown where you have a mixture of different types of residential types, like patio homes, townhomes, apartments. Then you could have a mixture of like with office space, or like like a downtown where you would have office fronts or storefronts at the street level and apartments
above them.
Yes,
Which
you'd
would
be able to cluster them into one area and be able to conserve or preserve a natural area there as well too, as far as open space.
Which would be similar to what they have like in Franklin, where they've got a large shopping area
Yeah.
on the bottom and apartments on the top, and then back behind it, they have townhomes or things like that.
They have that in
Retirement things.
Nolensville as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, super cute.
So you're able to do a compact development, development that would usually sprawl over you'd be able to bring everything in closer, so they would use less impervious surfaces, and it would be pedestrian friendly.
So, this is supposed to be a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing for the public to be able to comment on this. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this? And it doesn't look like there is, so I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion. Now, the motion should be either to send a favorable recommendation of the request to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, or an unfavorable request.
I'll make a motion to send a favorable recommendation of the request.
Second.
I have a motion and second to send a favorable recommendation to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen concerning these text amendments. Any discussion from the commission? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. The next one is zoning text amendment 222. Is that it, Lee?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, zoning text amendment 222 to the zoning ordinance. It looks like you're adding this is where you're adding a new zoning designation.
And yes, we're suggesting to add a large lot district. It would be more conducive to our more rural areas of the city, where to keep that type of character in that area, and also to keep type of development out of areas where we don't have the infrastructure in place to support them. We're just going to require a minimum of 2 acres, 200 lot width, and that's the lot width, that's the line, it's at the very front building line from side lot line to side lot line. There's going to be increased setbacks, 50 feet from the street right of way, 50 feet in the rear, and 20 or 30 on the sides. The whole purpose is to create a low density type of district. And it would, probably fit in better like in areas like on Ledford Mill Road or out Wilson Avenue when you get up near the county, or near the county line.
So this one could affect the gentleman that's requesting the subdivision out on Ledford Mill Road.
Mr. Waters, yeah, I explained the 2 text amendments that we were going to review today. So I told him, you're looking at a large lot district, and we're looking at a planned development district, which is, it's one that's heavy on design, so it's going to be a little bit more upfront cost. Well, it'll be a lot more upfront cost because you have to get an engineer or an architect and get together, start going over how you're going to accommodate the compact development. The R1A is low density, so it would be a use by right. It has the same uses as the regular R1 district. It does allow for agriculture uses if somebody does 5 acres or more, but it's pretty much the same uses beyond agriculture.
Question. Have you considered the issue that we've had before us before called on connectivity, and how connectivity points are created in these areas?
When you're talking about our connectivity index,
Mm-hmm.
well, yeah, the subdivision, if they did it, would have to meet that criteria, regardless of what they're zoned. So, I mean, this one, you'd have to take a look at any type of development, how much acreage is going to be used for roads. And
Still same restrictions would apply on connectivity to this
Yes, sir.
development?
Yes.
Okay.
And this would address some things that you, Jimmy, have brought up before about people with larger lots that, or having larger lots that you were worried because they were in an area where other people were building with larger lots around them, that these people might subdivide into smaller things.
Right.
So this zoning would take care of that sort of thing too. Okay, so did I open a public hearing on this one? I didn't. Okay, there will be a public hearing on this, and I will open the floor for comments. And seeing no one from the floor to comment, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve this, to send a favorable recommendation to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, changing this portion of the zoning text to add the R1A large lot residential districts. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Other new business, zoning map amendment A228. A228, this is going to be on page 73.
This went to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. There was some concern about conflicting zoning or zoning that there would be conflict between residential districts and the I-2 district that was being requested. So it was remanded by the board back down to the Planning Commission for further discussion and to either bring back a recommendation of some sort. There was a suggestion by one of the aldermen about looking at I-1. We could go the I-1 route. We would need to rezone more than one lot. We would need to rezone a couple of them to try to get out of any accusations of spot zoning. And probably would just go ahead and need to amend the land use plan at the same time, which we can do in the comprehensive development plan to reflect that that's supposed to be I-1, so it won't look like that we're being arbitrary or capricious about rezoning something that isn't called for in the land use plan.
Okay, so this is not a, this does not require a public hearing, correct?
We already had a public hearing on it. If we return back with the same recommendation, we don't need to do a public hearing. If we come back and want to do the I-1 avenue, then we'll have to re-advertise this, send letters to the adjacent property owners that would plan on, or lots that are going to be rezoned or proposed to be rezoned to I-1, and then re-advertise it, come back and open up another public hearing.
Or we could keep it C2 and make him pave his driveway.
Chairman, you ready for
Really the
discussion?
deal. That's why I was trying to get to I2.
First of all, I need to entertain a motion as to whether we will change our recommendation, which we gave a favorable recommendation on, based on the fact that it meets all the criterion of our own subdivision requirements and everything else.
It meets the requirements of our
Land
meets the
use
policy of the land use plan.
Of the land use plan and things, okay? So I need a motion as to whether we're going to send a favorable recommendation or change that to an unfavorable recommendation.
I make a motion to make a favorable recommendation.
To rescind the favorable
Yes.
recommendation, all right?
This favorable recommendation is to,
would be to allow the subdivision.
The rezoning.
The rezoning, I'm sorry, the rezoning.
And we have to second so we can actually go to discussion.
Correct.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and second to rescind the favorable recommendation, and discussion of the commission can now be opened. I would like to call your attention to page 77.
Well, I think Alderman Dunn brought this to our attention, and two of us sitting here, you know, on the planning commission, also on the board. If we switch this to I-2, there's some uses in I-2 that wouldn't be, if I lived in the residential section below that, probably wouldn't much care to live there. I think the intent of the property owner was to, if he went to I-2, he could keep that driveway gravel. If he went and stayed with C2, he would have to pave it. Is that correct?
Well, and if he was to expand it, being that he's doing the distribution type of business, there would be more vehicles there, so he would have to enlarge he's gonna have to enlarge the parking area anyway, so it would have to be all paved. I don't know the weight of the vehicles that he's gonna be using, so I don't know if it has to be heavy duty or if it can just be regular pavement. But that's, you know, the way the conversation went was, informed him that it needed to be it was C2 and that it would have to be paved. He asked about some of the businesses on Mitchell Boulevard and why they weren't paved. So those are rezoned industrial. He asked if that was a possibility that he could be rezoned industrial, and for the land use plan, it was calling for it to be heavy industrial. And that's the reason why staff gave it a favorable recommendation, was based upon the land use plan.
But does the land use plan say for future industrial where it's residential?
It calls for it to be commercial.
Okay.
It's
But before we go too heavy into the discussion, please read the top of page 77. This was added.
My 77 is just a picture. Let me look at this printed out stuff.
Oh, so then, should we just let this go?
it's a little bit late for this discussion, really.
You've lost the business.
Got it. Because of all this.
Well, I mean, what if he sells it to someone else that wants to do the same trick?
Well, that's up to them. They'll have to write a request to us and we'll have to approve it. Right now, there's nothing for us to do.
My flavor from the board was, if it came with a favorable recommendation to rezone it to I-2, it would not have passed. That's just my, you know, I don't have a magic hat on to predict how everybody would vote, but that's why it's back in our lap here tonight.
But is it back in our lap if he, I mean, at this point, so this is
No.
just for us to come
It's not.
talk about? What's the
Right.
difference between I-2 and
You-
I-1?
I-2 is heavy industrial. There's a lot of other more intense uses that can be done in I-2, manufacturing, tanning, all kinds of different type of processes that there's either noise or odor or vibration that would be considered to be noxious.
Yeah.
Whereas I-1 is mainly a warehousing, distribution. There is some light manufacturing assembly that's allowed, but not nearly as intense as what would be allowed in I-2.
Yeah, and this guy would not have been doing any of that. He'd have been reloading vending machines, which have been fairly innate. I mean,
As has been pointed out, he could have done exactly what he wanted to do with his zone C2 without it being rezoned, with the exception of there were some paving issues involved.
Huh.
Yeah,
That was the only issue.
but when you bumped it up to I-2, that's what, you know,
Triggered the,
that's what triggered our discussion on the board. So the next day, he sent an email and said, I'm selling the building.
If you would allow me to address that, I'll
Sweet,
I
Lee.
want to add a few more pieces. Lee, did you provide them with a map that you showed me?
Yeah, that's on page 85.
So if you look at the map on page 85, I think this just adds a little bit to the discussion.
Oh, wow.
So you can see that on the other side of the existing I-2 is I-1. So we have light industrial, we have heavy industrial, we have commercial zoning, and we have residential zoning all in this area. And I think you're exactly right. Alderman Dunn's concern was this particular parcel adjoins
Abuts
residential.
to R2.
And so
Tangled
she
up
wanted,
area.
she wanted us to look at going with light industrial as a reasonable compromise, that those uses, I think, fit the area better and don't allow some of the less desirable uses that a heavy industrial would. Also, when Lee and I looked at it, those parcels are not really large enough to accommodate heavy industrial. So I think even if you were to rezone it heavy, the likelihood that a heavy industry is going to come in is
They don't have enough
slim to
room.
none. They would have to assemble more of those parcels together for that to even be a reality. So again, that points to our future land use, which was proposing all of that area to be I-2 probably is not correct. I think another reason staff supported the rezoning request for I-2 is just looking at that spot zoning issue. Looking only at what's contiguous and saying, yes, we can support I-2 because it's contiguous to I-2, but when you zoom out a little bit, light industrial's a better zone, a more realistic zone, and it does, for very reasonable business purposes, you're gonna have truck traffic, so we allow the gravel parking, the gravel driveways. What's existing out there is all gravel. So, you know, I think you're right. In the short term, I talked to the applicant today, and I think we have lost out on this investment, this company coming here. I think some of it is just the timing of the bureaucratic process that it is. From what I understood, from the time they bought the property, it's maybe been 10 months of researching, buying the property, researching the zoning issues, researching the cost of compliance. And in the meantime, they've had an offer for somebody who wants to buy the property, and that looks a lot more attractive to them than paying for the paving, striping, driveway, or waiting on this process to figure out if they'll be rezoned industrial. So, you know, maybe that's past, but I think looking forward, I would take from the future land use map that we saw this as industrial property, and now just being reasonable about looking at the parcel size and what fits our community. Light industrial seems to make more sense. You just can't do one parcel. So that's where you're stuck. If you only want to rezone what's requested and honor his request to go to I-2, we can do that. If you want to reconsider and look at what Alderman Dunn is proposing, you'll have to rezone multiple parcels so that you're not spot zoning.
And what would that entail? What would that entail?
Well, I think we have a recommendation of 4 parcels.
Yeah, there was 4 parcels that adjoin it that can be rezoned with it. We have to notify the owners of the property if they weren't party to the application.
So it makes for a lengthier process, but again, the applicant is saying at this point, the length of the process isn't a consideration. He's already made the decision to sell the property. But the existing businesses, if I remember, it's a UPS store,
UPS, and then there's a laboratory there on the corner.
Oh, okay.
GTO.
Yeah, and there used to be there was it's his personal business stuff, because his wife's running an office, but also doing like education, like she has like this one-on-one students, and then of
So
course.
they're all uses that fit in commercial now, they're zoned commercial now, but they would also fit in light industrial and maybe even benefit from some, being allowed some other uses that they
Wait,
wouldn't be in commercial.
They're zoned commercial now?
Yeah, everything red is C2.
Gotcha, so we're talking about the,
I believe the trade school's empty now, though. I thought I saw a for sale sign in front of it. And that's one of the adjacent lots. That was another one.
So does it really make sense to send any kind of a recommendation to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen at this time? Considering that we have a new owner, possibly.
The problem doesn't go away, though.
What I'd
I
like,
think it does, because what I took away from the conversation with the applicant is that what we could have done better is if in our future land use, which is our planning document, that we have done, should have, had a good public engagement component to that planning effort. We've said we want this property to be industrial, that we see commercial and industrial in this area. If you want to support bringing industry, the land needs to be ready for industry. What we're finding out in this process is it was zoned possibly incorrectly commercial, and it prohibited this business being able to locate here in a timely manner, and they decided to go somewhere else. So yes, I am kind of imploring you, if you support the thought that this land is best used for industry, then let's get it zoned properly so we can attract the next company, because we've already missed this one.
But I don't think that was Alderman Dunn's concern. She was more concerned about it being residential button up
Yeah.
next to.
Yeah.
That was not, that's why she brought it up.
That happens everywhere. You have residential, but in commercial, industrial, all over the place.
And it's been an interesting pattern, because when Lee and I looked at the history where you have residential, some of that was commercial that's been very recently rezoned residential. It was existing residential that was zoned commercial, and then they had trouble, I think, accessing mortgages and bank loans.
They had houses they couldn't sell. The banks wouldn't give them loans for somebody that wanted to buy their house because it was zoned commercial. For some reason, banks have gotten really strict on that now. Used to not be the case. If it was considered a allowable non-conforming use, they would go ahead and fund it. But here lately, they've been very much sticklers about if it's zoned commercial and it's not conforming, that they're not going to give any loans out or any refinancing or anything.
We had the same thing over on Washington
Yeah,
Street
same
where
thing
they
on Washington-
rezoned those
Washington.
ones industrial
Yeah.
there. People were actually still living in the houses and everything, and they zoned everything industrial.
Well, you know, the problem is that if it were to be damaged by a fire, or tornado, or something like that, more than 50%, they couldn't replace it with what was the non-conforming use before. So that the mortgage holder would lose that, because all they'd end up with is a vacant lot that couldn't be placed back in where it was before. So that's the problem.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir?
what I would like to see, we'll figure out how to do this, but what I'd like to see is this particular issue tabled. Until next month, I'd like to see a plan presented to the board for rezoning these properties, I-1.
I-1 or I-2?
I-1.
and is that for rezoning them now or changing the land use plan?
We can do it at the same time. It would be best to do it at the same time. It affords us some type of protection if everybody argues with the rezoning. If it's part of our plan and it's zoned that, then it's on more solid foot as far as a legal challenge.
Does it make sense, like, so the C2 ones that you said, would they still be okay in an I-1?
Yeah, those are actually should be I-1 anyway.
Okay.
And what that means, what my suggestion means is that until we get the proposal to rezone these 4 or so plots to I-1, that it will remain C2 until that time.
Okay, to do what you would like to do, Ray, then I will, if everybody wants and agrees, I'll call the question on the favorable recommendation. If you agree with Ray that you want to postpone it till the next planning meeting, then you will vote no on this.
You could also, we've got written confirmation from the applicant, and you could actually accept his, as a withdrawal.
Oh, does he request a withdrawal?
Well, that's what he's saying, he said he sold it, so if it's a different owner that comes in, then they'll need to reapply.
Talking with him today, I didn't take it as it was sold, but I know he put it on the market a week ago. That's what he said. But he had an interested party, he didn't say it was sold. Is that what it said?
No, he said that he wasn't considering coming here, so when I was, the email I sent him was that, gave him the recap of what happened at the Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting, and then he sent me an email stating that he did not plan on moving his business, said, "I've decided to leave my business in Fayetteville, have put the building up for sale, the next owner may need to address this issue." So I took it as
Right, he didn't sell it.
withdrawal as far as his request.
But you talked to him and he acted like he had somebody that might be interested in buying it.
Well, we can start with a new application to do the I-1. It wouldn't lose any time, because we got to come back here anyway. If that's the board's, is that what we want to do just in general, is to rezone it I-1?
We don't have to have a new application. We can do it as a board. We don't have to have someone requesting we do it.
Well, no, I'm not stating that. I'm talking about as a new case. Since this particular applicant no longer wants to pursue it, then we'll just do it as initiation from the city.
From the board.
Yeah.
Either way, I think it would be better if we voted on because we have a motion on the floor to send a favorable recommendation, or resend a favorable recommendation. I think we ought to vote on that and then move on to what we want to do after that. So I'll call the question on that. Those in favor of the motion to send a favorable recommendation to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
No. I'd like to have a hand count of all those voting no to make sure. Okay, 4-1, therefore it is, the motion to send a favorable recommendation fails. Now I will entertain a second motion concerning this. If someone wants to
I'll see if I
do
can make that motion.
if you look at item number 3, that may be the way you want to read it. On page 76.
I actually want to amend that one and just say postpone vote until next planning commission on September the September. Yeah, you got past me there, sorry. September the 16th.
September the 16th,
Oh,
right?
God.
We're due.
The next day.
So you'll still be here.
I'll still be here. Do you want to make that motion?
Well, my motion is to table. Well, we've already killed that motion, so already killed that. So now my motion is that
Postpone.
Point of order.
we don't even need, that motion's that.
We don't need to, I don't think we need to enact item number 3 here. When this motion failed, that issue's dead.
It's
Yeah.
true.
It's dead. We can make any motion we want now about this property.
Yeah,
If we want
yeah,
to
you
move
can. That's
to-
that was
to
just a form
direct staff to
concept that
look
I
at this
had.
whole thing and develop a plan, then that kind of motion would be appropriate.
Yeah, this was just a form concept for how you might start.
Yes, I guess the motion can be along these lines. Move to request the plan be presented back to the board at next Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting to rezone the appropriate number of parcels to I-1 in this particular area that's under discussion.
Well, I'll have to take it back through here before I can take it to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for recommendation.
Oh, of course,
Okay.
of course.
So that's,
It
okay.
it
So I
comes
mean-
back to this board.
Okay, yeah.
But you said our board.
You're requesting that it come back from you to this board.
Okay.
The parcels we want to rezone I-1.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so I have a motion.
Sort of a motion.
What is your motion? We can't table the item
No, he's making a new motion for
It's a
staff.
new motion.
to, spell it out for me. What was your motion?
Forget about that, so. The motion is to direct Director Lee Lawson to present to this board, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, the Board of, excuse me, the Regional Planning Commission, at the next board meeting, a plan to rezone 4 or so parcels in the subject area back to I-1, to I-1.
From I-1 to I-1?
No,
No.
to I-1.
Two islands. It'd be
From
From C2 to
C2.
I-1.
From C2 to I.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor to direct Director Lawson to return to this board at the next meeting on September the 16th, at which time everybody will be present. Maybe 2 of you, but there'll still be. And to bring a recommendation for changing the zoning on the 4 lots that are in question from C2 to I1. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That motion carries. Marathon. And the next meeting is September 16th. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, you've got to adjourn, but go into the Board of Zoning Appeals. We just got to do
Oh, yeah,
minutes.
that's right.
We
It's
just gotta do
fast, guys. It's fast, don't worry. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and second to adjourn the Tullahoma Planning Commission. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. And we will open the Board of Zoning and Appeals. Where's the documents? At the back?
87.
87. This is to approve the minutes of the Board of Zoning and Appeals that are on page 88.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve the meeting minutes of the Board of Zoning and Appeals. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. All right. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the Board of Zoning and Appeals.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn the Board of Zoning and Appeals. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. We are adjourned, folks.